Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, have you ever read your cruise contract? I know most people, like me, just kind of scroll all the way down to the bottom and click accept. Right? That's kind of what we do. But there are some things in the average cruise contract that completely might surprise you and would actually be illegal on land. Okay, to start off, there's 14 of them, and 14 might really surprise you, so stay tuned for that one. But first, some pretty obvious ones that most experienced cruisers know about. The first one is they can prevent you from drinking locally bought alcohol while on board. So you go on the shore, you see all those duty-free shops, you see those rum shops, you see sake places, you bring it back on board, and yeah, they're not gonna let you just pop open the bottle and start drinking anywhere on the ship. They're gonna take that bottle, store it until the final day of the cruise, and give it back to you to fly home. So yeah, they can do that one, and I think most people would say they understand why. Number two, they don't have to give you any money if they happen to deviate from the route right now without prior notice. So something's going on at a cruise port, they can't get there, they change the itinerary. Yeah, they don't have to give any compensation at all, and that's in the cruise contract, and we can all understand that. Like, for instance, all of a sudden there's an earthquake happening in the port you're going to go to. Well, they're not going to bring you in an earthquake zone. There's a war broke out in the area you're going to. They're not going to bring you in that, and they're not going to pay you money because those things happen in those ports. They will try their best to accommodate you and bring you someplace else, but they don't have to give you any money back. A cruise line, for number three, can also disembark you or change your accommodations without liability or compensation or refund. So most people will understand, yeah, you know what, if you do something wrong on a cruise ship, they can kick you off, right? They can disembark you. If there's a medical reason, they can disembark you. But how about, can they just change your room? Willy-nilly. So you paid for a suite, and suddenly they're going to change your suite and put you into a balcony instead. Or worse, an inside cabin, right next to the elevator, underneath the dining hall. You know what I mean? Well, technically, in the cruise contract, it says they don't have to compensate you anything when they did that. Now, I've never heard of a cruise line changing somebody's cabin for a reason that's going on and not compensating them if the cabin category was different. I have heard them change a person and put them into a cabin that they considered better, and then all of a sudden the person owed more money. I have seen that, and normally when you contact the cruise line, they'll just reset it and put it, because they moved you, you didn't move yourself. So you keep an eye out for those things. But yeah, they can move you, they don't have to pay you. Also, number four, cruise lines can cancel your trip for any lawful reason without prior notice. So, like I said, an earthquake into an area, the ship, engines all break down, they can't get to they can just cancel it without prior notice, and technically, they don't have to compensate you for it. Most cruise lines do, but in the contract, they don't necessarily have to. Usually what they'll do is compensate you the balance of the cruise. Now, most people would say, hey, I want all my money back. This wasn't the cruise I paid for. But yeah, there are some lawsuits out there that are asking that exact question because the cruise line only paid them the part that was canceled. Number five is they can also require you to accept their refund fees without recourse. In other words, you're not allowed to sue them. You're not allowed to complain. You just have to shut up and take the money, and that's all you're going to get. So, if a port's canceled and etc., and they give you your port fees back, but no other compensation, that's all they're required to do. They don't have to compensate you anything else, and you really are supposed to just that's it. You have to take it. That's actually in the contract. Number 6, I perfectly understand. They can refuse any refund or damaged claim resulting from a cancellation or change due to factors not within the cruise line's exclusive control. So, here's a scenario that could have played out. When the governments refused to have the cruise ships come back to port. Remember that? Because of COVID. Technically, that is beyond the cruise line's control. The governments refused to let them come back to shore. They refused to let them cruise. Technically, they could have said, well, that's it. We don't have to give refunds. We don't have to claim damage or anything like that. If you guys want money back, contact the government. Sue the government. They could have done that. They didn't because they would have lost all their customers, right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine? But the cruise companies would have saved an awful lot of money had they done that. But no, they actually don't have to give you anything back right in the cruise contract. Will they? I have seen some cruises that have canceled and they don't want to give you any money back. Number 7, how about if they value your personal property? So you brought a laptop. My laptop's, $3,000 to $5,000 depending on the country. If you're US, it's $3,000. Canada was around $5,000. My laptop's worth $5,000. Stateroom attendant comes in, accidentally knocks it over, smashes it, it breaks, it's no good anymore. Well, your property's worth anywhere between $50 and $100 unless you bought extra insurance. That's all they have to cover. That's in cruise contracts. Your personal property is only valued at so much. Now, I have seen the cruise lines give out much more money when something like that happens, but they don't have to. They usually do it, to keep you as a good customer. But I don't know if they would want to give me $5,000 because somebody knocked over my laptop. I would want them to give me $5,000, but I don't know if they would. And how about this? You have a disagreement with the cruise ship. You think they owe you money because they did something and et cetera, and they say, no, we don't owe you money. Well, they can force you to go to what's called arbitration. Instead of going to a court, instead of going to something else, they can demand that it's being resolved through arbitration, where you plead your case to one person, and that person decides who wins. And his decision or her decision, it's final. So yeah, no judge, no jury, just one person. Plead your case. And one of the reasons they do that, because they can also prevent you from entering into a class action lawsuit. That's in the contracts. Now, are there class action lawsuits out there? Yes, there are plenty of class action lawsuits. However, for a class action lawsuit to go through and all the things you have to sign up for and everything, once it's shown to the court, the first thing the court's going to look at is this extenuating circumstances? Is this something the cruise line could control? Is it, within reason? Things like that. And they will possibly just throw that class action suit out. Or they will say, you know what, these are extraordinary circumstances and there could be fault. We will allow the class action to go forward. There's a really good example right now where people went on a cruise, they had rough weather, they flew into like a cyclone weather and stuff like that. Not fun, not a great time. Some ports were canceled. People got seasick, but that's weather. Now now the courts are going to decide whether that class action lawsuit can even go forward. Is weather a reason to be able to sue a cruise line for a full refund when you went on the cruise and still were on the ship? Good question. And it's for the courts. And that's one of the reasons class action lawsuits aren't really that plentiful. And so you do decide to sue. You say, the heck with the cruise contract. I'm going to sue anyway and try my hand in luck. Roll the dice, if you will. Well, they can also limit your ability to where that goes, to a single federal court, or even a single country. That's right. They can say, hey, we're located in Bermuda. You want to sue us? We're going to take it to the court in Bermuda. Hey, this happened in Indonesia. You want to sue us? You're going to have to plead your case in Indonesia. They can actually do that. It's right in the contract. And because they sail all over the world, they do business all over the world. You can try and have it changed, but I think it's in there for a reason. And they're going to pick the court that favors them. Here's one that a lot of people might think, hey, how can that be possible? But number 11, they can refuse liability for any emotional distress or mental suffering under any circumstances other than those that you can prove in court as resulting from personal injury or imminent risk of injury. So, somebody passes away on a cruise ship. Remember that story where the gentleman, instead of being put into the morgue, he was left on a pallet in a storage freezer, and he actually started to, decay because he's not properly stored properly? The family freaks out when they heard that, right? Talk about emotional distress. Well, that's not distress caused by your injury and your personal imminent risk. That was somebody else. So that could be a loophole where they don't have to cover anything, right? It would have to be directly from you. Now, that case about going into a typhoon or a cyclone, there you could probably plead a case that says, hey, they put me in danger. That's why I had emotional distress. That's why I feared for my life. I was at personal risk. That lawsuit, in that circumstance, might go through. You see the difference? If it's threatening you, yes. If it's threatening somebody around you. Number 12, how about this? They just knock on your door and you go and answer it, and they decide to search your stateroom and your personal belongings. You can't say anything, and it's without any notice. They don't have to notify you they're going to do it. How do you think people get caught with, 50 pounds of cocaine hidden in their luggage or in their stateroom? It's because they know what's happening, they figure it out, and then they just go in and find it. And they don't have to tell you about it. They don't have to get a warrant. They don't have, anything in the United States, Canada, where, hey, you need a warrant to search my... Not in the high seas, they don't. Once they're out of the United States, they can pretty much do what they want. And one of those things, they can search anything of yours they want. Number 13 is they can make a proportionate refund if your cruise ends early or the cruise line's option. Give you a future cruise credit only. During the pandemic, when some of the cruises were canceled and ended early and they were sent back, a couple cruise lines out there only offered future cruise credits. They offered no refunds. And how many times did they say, oh, by the way, it's going to take 3 to 6 months for you to get the refund? Now, that's an extenuating circumstances, right? The whole world shut down at one point, and the cruise companies didn't have billions of dollars just to hand out to everybody to send it back. You can kind of see where they were going, but they didn't think the shutdown was going to last 2 years. That's why they did the 3-month thing. But some said, no, you have to take a future cruise credit, and that's all you can take. I know many travel agencies out there that you book directly with the travel agency and you pay the travel agency instead of the cruise line. They did the same thing, said, no, you got a future, you got to book with us next time you come back. Well, cruise lines are the same. And if your cruise does end early for any reason, remember the cruise that was sailing and they suddenly had kitchen issues where they couldn't provide food for the rest of the cruise and they canceled it? Well, they only offered people the refund up until that day, the part that was left remaining. All that other money, their airfare, everything else, they still had to cover. Some people weren't happy, and that's why, yeah, there is a class action lawsuit trying to get more money. And this one might surprise you. A lot of people would say, hey, wait a minute, you're selling this and you have somebody on your ship. How are you not responsible if they do something wrong? Well, they can insulate themselves from any liability for actions performed by any subcontractor. That includes shore excursion personnel and the ship's doctor. The doctor they hired to be on the ship to look after you medically. So if that doctor does something wrong, they're not liable. You are. Now, if there's something wrong with the hiring practice or the credentials of the doctor and they hired them and they didn't do a good vetting, then maybe you have a case in that. But if the doctor gives you the wrong medication or does something wrong and it severely injures you going forward, the only person you can sue is the doctor. And good luck doing that, because many of them aren't from the United States. Many of them are from other countries. And yeah, that is not an easy thing to do. And shore excursion operators. You go on a shore excursion, you go on a bus, the bus drives over a cliff, and people are injured, broken legs, broken or worse. The only people you can sue are the shore excursion people, even though you bought the shore excursion through the cruise line. And that's one of those reasons, you know, when they pass around a liability waiver? Yeah, don't sign it. Or fake sign it. I sometimes just write John Hancock on those things because, no, hey, I'm not excusing you from any liability if you do something at fault, right? I want my legal options if they purposely do something at fault and run a bad tour. But don't take my advice. You didn't hear that here. But yeah, I do not trust those waiver signs. Now, if they give me a waiver to go snorkeling, yeah, I'm snorkeling at my own risk. But I'm not going to sign on a bus tour, just driving around the city. I'm not going to sign a waiver saying I will not sue this if that driver is drunk and crashes the bus. Not signing those papers. They want to kick me off the shore excursion, they can go ahead and do it. But all that being said, the cruise line is not responsible for those people. I kind of understood the third party contractors, right? But the doctor? How can they not be held responsible if a doctor that they're hiring on board does something wrong? That almost makes it sound like, hey, if you have one of your crew members come on board and they do something wrong that endangers people, you're not liable for them doing it neither. If you didn't vet them properly. There's so many legal loopholes, but wow, the doctor really did surprise me. So let me know, did any of these surprise you guys? That one did. The rest of them I kind of get, but I didn't also know that they could force you to go to arbitration. I didn't know that they could tell you, oh, you lost something worth $5,000? Well, we're going to give you $50 for it because that's all we're liable for. I didn't know that one either. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.